Thank you. So hello, my name is Lisa, and as you can see from the slide, I'm Director and Co-founder at Elliott Blanchard. But actually, I'm more proud of the fact that I'm a general nurse and sick children's nurse, and I've worked in the NHS for 30 years. My last role in the NHS, employed by the NHS, was Head of Quality Improvement in Manchester. And within that role, I worked alongside Vanessa. So we've been working together for about 10 years. And Vanessa's also co-founder of Elliott Blanchard. So I'm Lisa Elliott and Vanessa's Vanessa Blanchard. Quite a handy one. Sam is somebody that we've been working with for the last 6 months. And as Caroline said, quite an unusual job title. It was a pilot project that we're going to share with you today, which is now a permanent position. And Sam is Patient Experience Midwife at Pennine Acute. So our presentation title that we're going to talk through with you is about transforming services for women and children using social media. But in actual fact, what I'd like to offer you really is an alternative title to begin with. And that is it's actually about changing culture through conversations. And so in order to transform experiences, we need to get this bit right. So I'm going to speak through just roughly why conversations matter, very briefly, and how those conversations can turn into change, and what we did with the pilot project. And then Sam and Vanessa will speak through the learning from the front line, what actually happened, what we changed and how we did it, and why Sam's role made the difference. In 2014, the NHS 5-year forward view said that one of our greatest strengths in this country is the NHS, and that's because it's for the people, by the people and of the people. I think that's why it is a national treasure, because we absolutely all own the NHS, we're part of it and it's for us. It's for every person without discrimination. But also, it went on to say that we need to engage with people differently, with our citizens and with our public and our patients. And I think that although we all know it's a legal requirement, we may be not always achieving the same as well as we should. We believe that social media gives us a new opportunity to engage with people in a different way. It's more efficient and it's in real time. We're able to provide that opportunity for people to communicate with us on a much greater scale. We can scale up our messages quicker and faster and at any time of the day or night. We can involve people in generating ideas from a much wider group of people. We can also offer multimedia solutions people can share with us in words, in images, films or music through social media. And so again, increasing that accessibility. I think the important thing is that it's not just another megaphone approach. I think that we need to be very careful that we're not just shouting our information to others, that we're not just celebrating our own successes and making a big event of that, and that we don't just become a publicity machine. Using social media effectively, as we heard from the Facebook talk just before, can transform patient experiences, but it needs to be a conversation, a two-way dialogue for it to be effective. To be fair, I think marketing companies are also realising this, and they're starting to realise that we're in a generation now where we don't want to be told what to do or how to think. We want to choose much more for ourselves. And we don't want personalised messages that are just about putting our name in the right place. We actually do want to contribute to the way that things are. So there's this growing realisation that social media is about creating conversation. It's not just about publicity. It's not an interactive poster. It is different. And so we need to be braver to open up platforms for our patients and our public to engage with us and be part of that co-design exercise. Last year, the Nursing and Midwifery Strategy was launched, and that emphasised the need for individuals to be included in the way that we do change and add value, and also that needed to be done in a partnership way. But again, how do we achieve partnerships with individuals? It's by creating conversation. Because this is where the best bit happens. It's all very well if we speak to one person but never listen. We have to listen to really get the truth of what we're trying to do. So that's where the pilot project came from, really. We wanted to think about how we could bring about change and whether social media platforms would make the difference to what we were already doing. So we had our initial question of would Care Opinion as the online platform, the social media platform, work if promoted with Twitter and Facebook in terms of, firstly, generating more meaningful conversations with patients and staff, secondly, in ensuring a much quicker response to improve patient experience, and then thirdly, to see if we could identify where quality improvement work needed to happen and that we could do this in a partnership way. So the project was a partnership. As I said, we worked with Care Opinion on this, and we chose Care Opinion because it was a well-existing platform that allows for patients and carers to tell their story and to post their story in a very public way. And anybody can do this across the country. It also allowed NHS staff to respond. The mechanism on the platform is that there can be a conversation. So this was a perfect platform for us. Pennine Acute, and specifically the Women's and Children's Division, were our partners in terms of NHS frontline staff. And that was because myself and Vanessa were already working with the team on the CQC improvement plan, and we knew that this was a team that genuinely wanted to improve, and they were a team that were genuinely struggling from a morale point of view because of a lot of bad messages in the media. And so actually if we could change that around using media, that would be helpful to the staff. And then myself and Vanessa, contributing our previous experiences of having done this before in a large organisation, where we'd changed the culture from that of control and command, as Caroline alluded to at the start, to one where people are free to tweet whatever messages because the trust is there. And then another key partner was going to be the women and families, who weren't currently partners, but we needed to be able to create an ethos and a culture that allowed them to become genuine partners, not just about them giving us feedback, but about them being part of the change as well. And so we needed to band the whole thing together with a new culture of trust. So the timeline for the project. This time last year, as I said, myself and Vanessa were already working with the team, and so we did some quality improvement work on the maternity wards in the hospital that we've done the pilot. And so we were able to role model how to do quality improvement, how to bring about changes in a different way, and how to do it with patients at the heart. And then from March to May, we were commissioned to run some quality improvement training with all of the staff from across the children's and women's wards and departments. And so they then learnt the methodology, but they had a whole day focused on using data for change, with the priority being that if it's not good for patients, don't do it. So if you don't listen to your patients, how do you know that? And then in June, we were very lucky that the secondment opportunity for Sam was approved, and she was appointed into the role of patient experience midwife, which was a trial at that point. And she then was able to have some initial training from us in quality improvement coaching in how to implement using Care Opinion for feedback alongside friends and family test, and how to bring that into a new way of using it so it actually led to change and wasn't just about another tick box or another listening exercise. And then Care Opinion, at that point, were also able to establish their full licence with Sam and provide her with all the training and support she needed, all the resources she needed, and also support the media campaign around that through their Twitter profile. And so stories were able to be shared that were from the women, and also stories about the changes that were happening could be shared quickly. And Sam will talk to you some more about how she was part of all of that. And then tomorrow, actually, is our first of the service user forums. So through the first, where are we now, 4 to 6 months, we've been able to do a lot of quick changes that Sam's going to talk to you about. But we also know that there are certain things that what you might call wicked problems, things that there's not an obvious right thing to do. So you don't want to just react to the feedback, because actually you need some time to think about it. And so that's why this service user forum is a partnership forum. We've got Health Watch involved, commissioners, staff from the Acute Trust and women and families. And we're going to be looking at one project at a time over a 6-month period, using quality improvement methodology so that the right change is the change that's made. So it's with great honour now that I hand over to Sam, and Sam's going to talk you through what it's been like for her and what she's managed to achieve so far.
Hi, thanks for listening. So my name's Sam Whelan and I'm the Patient Experience Midwife at the Pennine Acute Trust. So who are we? We are a large acute trust set a few miles out of Manchester city centre. We serve a patient population of about 1 million people with 4 hospital sites. I'm based at Oldham and we do support our women with around 5,500 births per year. So my story is my background was clinical for many years. I worked largely in the community setting and I also was involved in research. I'm really passionate about providing woman-centred care and I wanted to make a change for our women at the hospital. So when I saw this job advert come up, I thought it would be an ideal position for me. It was a new role at the Pennine Acute, as Lisa alluded to, and as far as I'm aware, I think nationally, I'm not aware of any other midwife with the title of Patient Experience Midwife, so it is quite unique and quite a good opportunity for our women in service. Initially, I felt very anxious, as you can imagine, a new role, a lot of responsibility. I was dead excited because it was a chance to be involved in a great team effort to improve the service based on feedback for our women and families in the Oldham area. I wanted to make the pilot a success. And so to enable me to do that, I had Lisa and Vanessa on hand to offer some coaching techniques in quality improvement, but also regular contact by emails, panicky phone calls. I had the team at Care Opinion to support me. I went on a workshop day which they put on, which I felt was invaluable. But also I had great support from our leadership team. Deborah Carter, who is the Divisional Director of Women and Children's, and also Helen Howard, the Divisional Director for Women for Midwifery and Gynaecology, who was there to offer me one-to-one support on a regular basis. So initially, what did I do? Well, I knew I had to get the staff on board, which initially what I did was turn up at the hospital at different times of the day. For those of you who work in the NHS, you'll know the ward handover is a crucial time to relay information to others. I started going around the ward with my iPad, gathering stories for Care Opinion. And then I looked at developing some boards, which you can see behind me, which are in all the clinical areas. They display not only the stories shared via Care Opinion, but what changes we've been able to make as a result. It was really important that I was visible on the ward as well, not only so the women knew who I was and what the role was about, but also so I was available to answer any questions from the staff. I wanted to tell them about Care Opinion, how it worked. You know, it was a new thing in our trust. So the challenges really initially were about getting the staff on board. As Lisa alluded to, the staff morale, because of our CQC inspection and some of the negative press we'd received in the media, was quite low. So they were very anxious, I would say, about thinking that Care Opinion, the stories that the women would tell, would be largely negative. Actually, the stories on the whole have been absolutely fantastic and show what a great midwifery team and workforce we do have at the Pennine Acute. So, how did I spread the word? Well, when I started the Care Opinion pilot, I did have a Twitter account. Did I use it? Not really. What did I do? Relied on my 4 teenage children to tell me what to do. I didn't have a clue, honestly. Putting photographs on there and tweeting lines out, alien to me. But now I would say I'm not a pro at Twitter, but I am much better. We do have a closed Facebook group in the maternity unit, and this has really been key to boosting staff morale. I regularly put the positive stories from Care Opinion on there for the staff to see. And if any stories come through that have put the women have gone to the trouble of naming the staff, I do make sure that I email the staff that story so they can use it for their NMC revalidation folder, which we have to submit now every 3 years. The stories are very powerful. They are told in real time and they're far-reaching. I do know one of the stories ended up in Guernsey, so where that went from then on, I don't know whether it quite went viral or not. It really has engaged well with the staff. It's boosted morale, which has led to an increase in our stories and provided us with, at the Pennine, with an increased opportunity for change. So the picture you can see behind me is a story swarm of the stories the women have left on Care Opinion. The first arrow, what you can see here is the stories that were shared by the women before I commenced the pilot, which wasn't very many, as you can tell. Then when I started the pilot, you can see that we had a great increase in stories. I was able to go round, I was responding really quickly to the stories, and I was able to make some changes, which we'll come on to next. Where we are now is you can see there's been a slight decline in some of the stories, and that's been a great learning lesson for me. What I've realised is that when I'm off and I'm not as visible on the wards, there has been a dip in the stories. So next week we are starting a new ambassador role for our bands 2 to 4 to make not only make them feel more part of the team, but so they can promote the really good work with Care Opinion, and hopefully we can get some more feedback which will lead to more changes. So what changes have we made? The picture you can see here was left by a lady via a leaflet, which is also available for the women to tell their stories. If any of you have been in any NHS clinic, you will know they're extremely busy. This particular lady was sat in antenatal clinic. She had pelvic girdle pain, which can be very painful, and she said our chairs were really uncomfortable. That was an easy fix. We just provided more comfortable chairs for the women. So, is my room clean? A lady left a story saying a baby was on the neonatal unit and she wasn't sure if her room had been cleaned. As a result of that story, I designed complimentary cleaning cards which are now used across the unit. So when a lady isn't present and her room's clean, she can tell when she comes back it has been cleaned. And I think there's probably going to be a trust-wide rollout with that as well. So, as you can see, TENS machine, any of you use them in labour? Yeah? Well, I didn't realise that on our labour ward, so we have a labour ward and a birth centre, so birth centre is very low risk, but the labour ward, more high-tech stuff goes on there. We didn't actually have any TENS machines to support our ladies in labour. Well, we do now. So I would say this is the most powerful story for me as a health professional. My midwifery colleague there is in antenatal clinic. I've walked past these doors numerous times and never considered the ladies at the other side. At the other side of these doors is our gynecological assessment unit. So pregnancy, early pregnancy ladies come there, they might be bleeding and they might be possibly in the middle of a miscarriage. The story that was left alluded to the fact that she was pregnant, she felt sorry for the women that she could see through the clear glass. We put frosted glass on them doors now as a result, and they're 2 separate units. Dead easy to do, but what I found really powerful about that was I never considered that, and I think I know what the women want. Well, actually, unless you ask them, you don't. So it became apparent through numerous stories left via Care Opinion that there was a lack of information on our postnatal ward. So we designed an A4 laminated sheet. I don't think it's very clear on that picture there, but it's basic really, but it tells the women where they can get the breakfast. It talks about partners staying over and things like that. And as I said before, my role is now developed and I'm involved in other projects. But through being visible on the ward, the staff now come to me and want to share their ideas to improve our service. So this is the waiting area in our postnatal ward. Before it was very bland. They wanted to improve it. So what did we do? We commissioned an artist, and now we have a thank you tree. And there is more thank you cards and pictures of babies on that tree than that is actually in the picture there. So what's next for us? We had lots of stories through Care Opinion saying that there was various viewpoints on partners staying over on our postnatal ward. We encourage partners or mums to stay overnight. Part of the really early days of having a baby is that you've got your family close by for support. But we had different viewpoints from the women. Some were happy and some weren't. So our proposed project is, should partners be staying on the postnatal ward overnight? And from tomorrow, as Lisa said, we're going to start our quality improvement forum, looking at additional data collection, develop solutions using the PDSA test of change, and we're going to make recommendation for our next steps to improve the service for our women at Oldham. And next, we have the lovely Vanessa.
Hello, my name's Vanessa. So I'm going to share some of the learning from the pilot project that we had. So let's talk about what our recipe for success was. So our first ingredient was the Care Opinion social media platform. This was really key as it was a platform where we could respond to and communicate and have conversations with the women who were leaving their feedback. It also meant that we could pull data as well as the stories and print infographics that could be used in the ward environments. The next key to success was obviously the lovely Sam that you've just met. So she was key to the whole project. She was pivotal and pushed forward with all of the improvements. So she was the one that actually responded to all of the stories that were left on the site by the women, and she was also the one that communicated all of that feedback back to the wards. So it was making sure that there was a whole loop of information that kept coming around. So whether that feedback was positive or negative, it was fed back to the wards so that they could improve upon the things that they were working amongst. And for us at Elliott Blanchard, we obviously did some of the quality improvement training. So this was key, as it was the fact that staff knew what to do with the data, they could understand the data, analyse the data, and then implement the improvements going forward. And the last thing was about permission. So luckily Sam had a really good senior team that we'd been working with for nearly 12 months. And one of the key things that we were building up was the trust to allow staff to use social media. So they were given permission for the staff to use their own personal Facebook and Twitter accounts to tweet out about the stories that were coming in from the women and about any improvements that were made. So what you can see here, or not see very clearly, is one of the infographics that you can pull from the system. So this is the tag bubbles. So what this does is show you that the stories that came in over the 6-month period while we were doing the trial, and you can see the ones on the right-hand side that are green, they were all the positive stories that came in. So you can see, as Sam alluded to earlier, that the majority of stories that came through were all very positive. There were a few negative stories, but these were the ones that Sam was able to work on and make the improvements. One of the key things about this for the staff was that actually the teams we were working with, their morale was at absolute rock bottom when we started working with them. They'd been bashed by bad press stories and were really feeling the pressure, and that actually we had many staff that were in tears talking to us because they felt like they weren't doing a good job. So for them to actually see the feedback coming from the women highlighting what a good service they were providing really boosted morale on the ward and also helped the staff to improve things where there were issues. So a little bit more data here. So what you can see is the first line, which is the 12 months before we started the project. You can see that there were 6 stories left on the Care Opinion site with no responses, no changes, and it was viewed by 755 people. So that's 6 women that have gone onto the site and left their stories for Pennine Acute Hospitals, and nobody's responded to them. So I can tell you that some of those 6 stories were negative stories. So as we all know, if you leave a review or an opinion and you get no response, it's not always good and can then lead to formal complaints. And also as well, the 755 people that viewed those stories that had absolutely no response to them. So it wasn't portraying a good image of what we wanted to achieve at Pennine Acute. The line at the bottom is what happened during the 6-month pilot. So during the 6-month pilot, we actually received 176 stories on the system. We also had 184 responses. Now, there are more responses because, as we talked about, some of it was two-way communication. We had 7 changes that were implemented that Sam talked to you about earlier, and we had 7,290 views of those stories. So if you remember my previous graph, that's 7,000 people that have viewed mainly positive stories about Pennine Acute. So for women that are coming into Pennine Acute hospitals, most of them are provided with the option of giving birth at 4 different hospitals. So for us as a centre, it's really important that people can see that good feedback because it makes people want to come and give birth within our trust. So did we achieve what we set out to achieve? So we did generate more meaningful conversations with both the patients and the staff, as Sam already alluded to. Did we ensure quicker responses to improve the patient experience? Well, I can tell you that from the stories that were left on the care opinions site, 83% of them were responded to within 3 days. So the majority of stories that were put on there, people got a response within that 3-day period, which meant that people knew that something was being done if they'd left a bad review. It has identified where structured quality improvements can be made. As Lisa and Sam have talked about, we've got the forum that's starting tomorrow, which will ensure a partnership approach to achieving change. So what did we not do so well? Nothing's ever perfect, is it? So we could have started off better by having a readiness checklist. What we found is that actually we set off quite quickly with the pilot, and it actually took us longer to get Sam released than we originally anticipated. So we probably had about a month and a half at the beginning of the project where Sam wasn't in a full-time position to drive it through. Culture, we've talked about wanting a culture of trust. As everybody knows, when you're trying to change culture, it's a very slow process and it takes quite a while to embed. So I'd say that probably coming up to the 6-month mark now, it is just starting to get embedded. Staff are feeling comfortable to tweet and write things on Facebook, because for them it's quite a new practice. And it's okay to start small. So when we started the beginning of the project, we had children's wards as well within the division that asked whether they could be part of the pilot. So what we found with letting them start at the same time as maternity is that actually they didn't succeed as well. They didn't have a SAM in place, they didn't have the quality improvement training, and they didn't have that support there. So really we should have just started with the women's and children's and then rolled out for the next steps. And then we come back to the good old social media permissions. So whilst the Trust were quite happy for people to tweet and have social media accounts and send it from their own personal accounts, once the wards got used to all the social media activity going on, they actually wanted their own ward Facebook and Twitter accounts that were open to the public. However, the Trust doesn't feel it's quite at the point yet where it can trust the staff enough to have those accounts yet. So it is a work in progress and we are getting there, but obviously it is slow to change. So I'm going to get you all up and moving now. So, if any of you have ever used Snapchat, can you stand up? See, there were loads. Lisa's teenage daughter thought that we were all too old for Snapchat, and I had to do that one first because no one had stand up. If you've ever used Facebook, can you stand up? Instagram? Twitter? What else have we got up there? LinkedIn? TripAdvisor? Have I got anyone sat down? Shout. No? Okay. Oh, there is one. None? No. Oh, there's 2 at the back as well. Okay, you can all sit down now. So the majority of you do use social media of some format. So we all know that social media is now part of our world. I know the lady who was speaking this morning said that you use it all the time, day in, day out. Everyone's on it all the time. You're looking at it once or twice a day. I know that personally for me, before I go on holiday, I spend about 3 hours on TripAdvisor, reading up all about the hotels, what's said about them, what's good, what's not good, and it informs my decision that I make. If I'm going out for a meal at the weekend, I might look at their Facebook page, see what the menu is, see what the food is. And again, it informs the decisions that I make going forward. If we use social media in such a trivial way for holidays and for food, why would we not use it to look into where we're going to give birth to our child or where we're going to have an operation? At the point where we're putting our lives in someone else's hands, why would we not use that information? And that is the way of the world now. There is more and more information out there. The more information that there is now on social media, it's about gathering that information as trusts, using that information to make changes and moving forward with it. The reason that we all joined the NHS or worked in the NHS or used the NHS is because we want good patient experience. We're lucky to have the NHS in this country. We're lucky to work in the NHS, and we all want what's best for our patients. So use the data that's out there and have a look at what that information is telling you. Care Opinion is out there for all trusts. Have you looked what it says about your trust? Has anybody responded to any of that information? Have a look about and think about that. We will be delighted for you to join us this afternoon at our round table event. Also, we are at a social media conference, so if anybody would like to follow us on social media, our Twitter accounts are there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was fantastic. What a great example of well-coordinated, thought-through use of social media to actually make an impact on services. It's fantastic. Do we have any questions? I can see some on my laptop on Slido. One's a comment. Fantastic examples of simple things making a big difference. Okay, one of the questions is, how do you share your successes amongst colleagues and, is it there, across local organisations so they can... Do you want to go back to the microphone here?
So I regularly tweet out really positive stories that we've received from Care Opinion. I also put up the stories around the department for our staff to see. We have not only made an impact on maternity, but we get stories about the anaesthetic team in theatre, the doctors. So I also make it my point to inform those teams as well, because they are part of our wider multidisciplinary team, and it's really important that they are aware of the positive feedback that we're getting. Our other local NHS organisations, again, I think we rely heavily on Twitter. People know people know people know people as Twitter goes along, you know. And like I said, the story that ended up in Guernsey, that was actually Guernsey Hospital Trust who were aware of that patient story. So Twitter really has been really phenomenal in sharing our success stories.
Here. Okay, so one that's got a vote. How do you gain patient opinion? Do you have a patient public group? Is that possibly because people don't understand what Care Opinion is? Perhaps you need to just explain what that is a little bit more. And just one other question before we finish on Slido, perhaps. What's the first thing? What's the first thing? Someone to copy what you wanted to do. Do you want to see if you can answer those two?
So just quickly then to explain about Care Opinion, and I probably won't do it the justice it deserves, but I can tell you that Tim and Callie are here from Care Opinion, so they'll be on our roundtable event and they're waving there. So any of you that want to know more about it then, please speak to them. But essentially it works like TripAdvisor. There is a portal, Care Opinion portal, accessible to anybody in the public. You can Google it, you can find it, you can look up your local trust or any trust and read stories and post stories. So in a simple kind of analogy, that's what it's like, and they'll give you much more details about it. In terms of what you can do first to copy what we've been doing, I think the key is really about thinking, how can that, well, first of all, pick the right team. You know, as Vanessa said, start small. Pick the right team that do want to change and that have a real driver for change. Think about the best social media platform. So Care Opinion, like we said, is perfect in that it's already set up for conversation. So you are posting and seeing a response. That's the start of a conversation. Whereas some of the other platforms are much more about megaphone approaches if you're not careful. But then coupling that with the other approaches like Twitter, like Facebook, blogs. We also use blogs to promote what we're doing. And so using that to promote what you're doing and maybe generate other conversations as well. So I think the key is find the right platform, find the right team, and start with a quality improvement methodology, really. That whole philosophy that we have of, if it's not good for patients, don't do it. So if you don't know what's good for patients and you don't ask them, then how are you ever going to know what to change? So I think that's also a key message to give.
Anyone want to put their hand up who hasn't been on Slido before we move on? John, yes? This is John Popham, by the way, who's live streaming videos of all the presentations, a digital storyteller.
Not working. Hello? Yeah. I really love what you're doing. I've spent years and years trying to get public servants of all kinds to tell their stories on social media. And very often, they're reluctant to do so. They say, well, I'm just doing my job. And my point to them is always, well, if you don't tell your story, you leave it open to the people to tell negative things about you. And it's interesting, you said that the 6 stories that were there before you started to do this project, were they mainly negative? Yeah, and the thing is, that's what I say to people, is that the negative stories will always get through. If you don't tell the positive stories, that's what people will think about you. And, I just think it's brilliant what you're doing, and more people should be doing it.
I think you're absolutely right, and as well at Pennine, like we alluded to, there was a lot of negative press. The local evening news was constantly frontline news, negative stories about this particular division and team primarily. And so one of the things we were saying to everybody is, you've got your chance to get your stories out, you've got your chance to engage with it more and gain a bit of control back, because the staff were literally at breaking point, and it was about giving them the ability and the hope that they could actually change something. And so again, I absolutely collude with what you're saying on that.
Can I just have a quick time? I think what's really been key to the success of Care Opinion Pilot as well is that, unlike closed Facebook groups, individuals have to use their real names on them platforms. On Care Opinion, it's actually anonymous. So the ladies can say exactly what they want without fear of reprise. If they're sat on the postnatal ward and they're not happy with the care, they will go on and they will say so, but they will say so anonymously, which is really powerful for them, So I think through Care Opinion and having the anonymity is a really powerful tool for the success of the pilot, actually.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you.